My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for Salvatore Moretti's collar, the silk of his tie cool against my skin. 3 months I'd worked in this sprawling mansion on the outskirts of New York, a world away from the chaotic favelas of Rio de Janeiro, where I'd grown up. 3 months of scrubbing floors, dusting priceless antiques imported from Italy, and keeping my mouth shut about the late-night meetings, the armed guards, and the whispers of violence that echoed through the marble halls. But this morning felt different, heavier, like the air before a tropical storm back home. The grand foyer reeked of polished mahogany and Salvatore's cologne, something sharp, like bergamot mixed with aged whiskey, the kind that screamed old money and older secrets. Sunlight poured through the towering windows, painting golden stripes across the imported Italian marble I'd mopped at dawn, my knees aching from the effort. The crystal chandelier overhead glittered like a crown of stolen diamonds, worth more than my family's entire life savings that had barely covered my one-way ticket to America after my mother's desperate plea for me to escape the cycle of poverty and danger. "You missed a spot," Salvatore growled, his voice a deep timbre that sent the other staff scurrying like rats in the shadows. Not me. I'd learned fast that his temper was a weapon, honed sharp but rarely swung without reason. At 42, he was Italian-American through and through, dark hair slicked back with just a hint of silver at the temples, eyes like black coffee that could burn through steel, and a scar across his jaw from some long-forgotten knife fight in the streets of Little Italy. He carried himself like a king in exile, commanding respect from men twice his size, his broad shoulders filling out the tailored suit that screamed power. I smoothed the Windsor knot, my knuckles grazing the crisp linen of his shirt. His stubble was fresh-shaved, but that scar stood out, a jagged reminder of the violence that had built his empire. "There," I said, pressing the tie flat against his chest. "Perfect." His gaze locked on mine, and for a split second, I saw a flicker. Curiosity, maybe, or surprise that I didn't flinch like Rosa, the housekeeper who practically vanished when he entered a room, her eyes wide with the kind of fear I'd seen too often in my own mother's face. That's when I spotted it through the window behind him. Marco, the driver who'd been with the Moretti family for 6 years, fidgeting with his jacket in the driveway. The sunlight caught the bulge at his waist, not the usual holster but something concealed, positioned for a fast draw. His face, Dios mio, that face. It was the same look my cousin had the night he got mixed up in a cartel deal back in Rio, desperate, cornered, ready to burn everything down for a quick payout. I kept my face blank, hands lingering on his tie just a second longer. Years of growing up in the favelas had taught me to hide fear, to read danger in a glance, to know when a man's eyes held murder. My father had been a drunk, beating my mother when the money ran out from his gambling binges, and I'd learned to spot the storm before it hit, to slip out the window or hide under the bed with my little brother, whispering prayers to saints who never seemed to listen. "Don't go," I whispered, lips barely moving. "It's a trap." Salvatore's body tensed like a coiled spring under my touch. His eyes narrowed to slits, dark and unreadable. "What did you just say?" I didn't repeat it. Instead, I grabbed the lint brush from the side table and rolled it over his shoulders, all business, my heart pounding like samba drums. To anyone watching, perhaps. Rosa peeking from the kitchen, it was just routine. "Marco," I murmured, voice low as a prayer in church. "Hidden gun." Keeps checking his phone, then the car. Not security posture, betrayal. His jaw clenched, that scar twitching like a live wire. For a long moment, silence hung heavy, thicker than the humid air back home. I wondered if I'd crossed the line, if this was the end of my fragile new life in America. Men like Salvatore Moretti didn't take orders from 25-year-old cleaners like me, fresh off the boat from Brazil, scraping by on $350 a week plus a cot in the servants' quarters, a tiny room with peeling paint and a shared bathroom that still felt like luxury compared to the shack I'd left behind. "Roberto," he barked suddenly, summoning his head of security, a hulking man with a face like cracked concrete, tattoos peeking from his collar that spoke of prison time and unwavering loyalty. Roberto appeared from the shadows of the adjacent hallway, his hand already on his pistol, eyes scanning for threats. "Cancel the meeting." Tell Marco I'm staying in today. Roberto's brow furrowed, but he nodded without question and vanished, his heavy boots echoing down the hall like thunder. I heard snippets of rapid Italian mixed with English, words like traditor that I'd picked up from kitchen gossip, enough to know when the staff was bad-mouthing me as the foreign girl, or planning a hit on some rival. The language barrier had been my shield at first, but now it frustrated me. I wanted to understand every nuance in this dangerous game. "Wait in my office," Salvatore ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument, his dark eyes boring into mine. "Don't speak to anyone." I nodded, throat dry as the Brazilian sorteio during drought, and climbed the sweeping staircase, my sensible black flats silent on the plush runner that probably cost more than a year's rent back home. The office was a fortress, walls lined with leather-bound books, mostly for show, their spines uncracked, a massive desk that could hide a body or secrets, and the faint scent of cigar smoke mingled with gun oil. I sat in the armchair, hands clasped to stop the shaking, my mind racing. Through the window, I saw Marco being dragged away by Roberto's men, his protests cut short by a swift punch to the gut. He didn't fight back, he knew better. 30 minutes ticked by like torture, the antique clock on the mantel mocking me with its steady rhythm. When Salvatore entered, his sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and dotted with old scars, knife wounds, bullet grazes, the map of a violent life. There was blood on his knuckles, fresh and bright red, and a smear on his crisp shirt. He poured scotch into a tumbler, neat, the amber liquid catching the light like liquid gold. "You were right," he said, moving to the bar cart with the grace of a predator. Marco was setting me up for the Vitalis, rival family, offering him 60 grand to deliver me straight into an ambush at the meeting. The Vitalis. Even I knew them. Another Italian crew pushing into Moretti territory, their name whispered in the servants' quarters like a curse. My aunt back in Brazil had ties to similar outfits, whispers of drugs, blood money, and bodies dumped in the Amazon. I'd fled that world, only to land in another version of it here. 3 months here, he continued, eyeing me like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, swirling the scotch in his glass. "And Rosa says you're the only one not terrified of me. The others scatter like leaves in a gale when I walk in." "Rosa jumps at shadows." I shot back, regretting it instantly, but the words slipped out in my accented English. But he smirked, a rare crack in his granite facade. "True. Why aren't you afraid, Isabella Martins? Most women, hell, most men, see me and think of the bodies I've buried, the empires I've crushed." Lies wouldn't work on him. I'd seen how he dissected people with a glance. My father back in Rio, he'd get violent after losing at cards or when the bottle ran dry, I said, meeting his gaze. I learned to read the signs, know when to hide or fight, when to speak or stay silent. You're predictable. Rules, order, a code. Fear works best when it's chaos, random. Yours isn't. Something shifted in his eyes, recognition, perhaps, or respect. He set down his glass with a soft clink. "And Marco? What tipped you off?" The way he adjusted his jacket, like it weighed wrong unbalanced. Eyes darting, car, phone you. Not protecting, plotting. Like a rat sensing the trap, but too greedy to run. He leaned close, and I smelled the blood mixed with his cologne, a metallic tang that made my stomach twist. "You saved my life, Isabella Martins. In my world, that's a debt deeper than blood." My pulse raced. Debts in his line meant chains or graves, obligations that could swallow you whole. But there was something else in his voice, a vulnerability buried under layers of command. "I want you as my assistant," he continued, straightening. "Rosa takes your cleaning shifts. Salary triples $1, $0.50 a week. Room in the guest wing. Full access." Not a question, a command, delivered with the certainty of a man who always got what he wanted. "Why me?" I asked, the words bolder than I felt. "You see what others miss. In this business, that's gold." He paused, that vulnerability flashing again, raw and unexpected. "And you fix my tie like I'm just a man, not the devil everyone whispers about." No one's treated me like that since my mother adjusted my collar before my first communion. My chest tightened. Salvatore Moretti, the untouchable boss, lonely under the armor of power and fear. I'll need to call my mother, she worries. The time difference to Rio is brutal, but she'll be up. Use the desk phone. He left, the door clicking shut like a finality. I dialed, the international line crackling, telling her about the promotion, the pay, the safety. The last was a lie, but necessary. She cried with relief, her voice thin over the distance. Be careful, Isabella. Men like that, they consume everything. The guest room was paradise. Views of manicured lawns stretching to the horizon. A bed like clouds with Egyptian cotton sheets. A private bath with marble fixtures. But 24 hours later, I was in Salvatore's office, notepad in hand, the air thick with cigar smoke and tension. Marco talked, he said, pacing like a caged lion. Vitalis have an insider here. I need you to watch, staff, meetings, everything. Not just notes. Eyes for betrayal, patterns in the chaos. Understanding dawned. This wasn't just a job, it was immersion into his world, a test of loyalty. I nodded, swallowing the fear. I can do that. That night, we hit the warehouse. Dressed in black pants and a fitted jacket that Rosa had procured, my size, no questions asked, I stood behind him as crates opened. Not imports, but guns, sleek and deadly, assault rifles gleaming under harsh lights. Vito, the supplier, smiled too wide, his gold tooth catching the light. All good, Moretti. As ordered. Payment tomorrow, Salvatore replied, his voice steady, but eyes scanning. Vito's hand twitched near his belt. Let's renegotiate. Higher cut. Risks are rising. Tension spiked like a live wire. I spotted it. Vito's man signaling shadows, glint of barrels in the dark, a setup as clear as day. Salvatore, I whispered, stepping closer. Ambush, 9 o'clock. Hidden guns. He didn't flinch, his face a mask. Vito, sloppy work. Floodlights blazed suddenly, revealing his hidden men, outnumbering Vito's 2-1. A shot rang out. Vito dropped, forehead blooming red like a macabre flower. Salvatore's men moved in, efficient as machines, securing the crates while others dragged bodies away. Back in the SUV, Salvatore smoked a cigar, the cherry glowing in the dark. Twice in 2 days. You saw it before Roberto, before anyone.
How?
The signaling, subtle hand movements, reflection on the barrels. Like spotting a mugger in the favelas before he strikes. He studied me through the smoke, eyes intense. You realize what that means? In my world, that kind of debt isn't paid with money. It's permanent. You're mine now, Isabella, protected, but tied to this life. No walking away safely. I should have felt trapped, like the walls of my old life closing in again. Instead, heat bloomed in my chest, dangerous and intoxicating. I understand. Do you? He leaned closer, the scent of smoke and cologne enveloping me. Not yet, but you will. The drive back was silent, but the air crackled with unspoken tension. When we arrived, Salvatore walked me to my new door on the 3rd floor, his hand brushing my lower back, a gesture almost courtly from a man who'd just killed. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow, your real education begins. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ornate ceiling, I realized something had shifted irrevocably. This morning, I'd been a cleaner. Tonight, I was part of his world. And God help me, the thrill outweighed the terror. 6 weeks on, routines deepened into rituals. Mornings, I brought coffee to his office at 7 sharp, black and strong like back home, organizing his schedule while he explained the intricacies of family business, territories, collections, alliances fragile as glass. His touch lingered now, adjusting my collar when it twisted, a brush of hands over papers, eyes meeting with heat that made my skin flush. One night, after dodging a Vitali hit on a convoy, bullets shattering glass, my heart in my throat, he pulled me into a safe house, his hands rough but gentle as he checked for wounds. You could have died, he growled, pinning me against the wall. So could you, I shot back, my fingers tracing his scar. The kiss was inevitable, fierce and claiming, tasting of adrenaline and forbidden desire. We fell into bed, his body hard and scarred against mine, whispers in Italian and Portuguese mingling as we explored each other. "You're changing everything," he murmured afterward, holding me close. I wasn't built for this for love. Neither was I admitted, thinking of my fractured family. But here we are. The Vitalis escalated. Whispers in the staff quarters turned to fear. Rosa confided in me one evening, her hands trembling as she folded linens. "They say Luca Vitali is targeting women now, wives, girlfriends, to break the men." I dismissed it at first, but the trap closed tighter. One afternoon, while Salvatore was at a meeting, they came for me. Not through the front gates, but a betrayal from within. Elena, the head housekeeper, drugged my tea, her eyes apologetic but resolute. "I'm sorry, Isabella. They have my son." I woke in a dingy warehouse, zip-tied to a chair, Luca Vitali looming over me, tall, slick-haired, with a smile like a shark. Salvatore's little Latina's secret. "You'll fetch a good price south of the border." Ice gripped my heart. Trafficking, not death, but a living hell, sold like cattle to cartels I knew too well from Rio. "He'll find me," I spat. Luca laughed. "That's the point. He'll tear his empire apart looking, and I'll take what's left." Hours blurred into agony, taunts, slaps, threats that made my skin crawl. But I held on, thinking of Salvatore's face, his scar, his rare smiles. When his team breached, it was chaos. Explosions, gunfire, bodies dropping. Salvatore burst in, eyes wild, trading himself for me in a voice raw with desperation. "Take me instead. Let her go." Luca agreed, too eager for the prize. As they dragged Salvatore away, our eyes met. "I love you," I whispered, the words finally free. Back at the estate, Sofia, Salvatore's mother, a steel-willed widow, rallied the allies. "Luca's crossed lines even we don't touch," she said, her pearls clicking as she paced. Families converged, old grudges set aside against a common threat. I insisted on the plan. "Send me back. Distract him while you position." "It's suicide," Roberto argued. "It's the only way," I countered. Dressed simply, unarmed, I walked into the lion's den again. Luca grinned as I signed a fake contract, gloating. "Moretti will break knowing you chose this." But as he monologued, the breach came, floodlights, gunfire, allies swarming. Salvatore, freed in the melee, shot Luca repeatedly, knees, shoulders, a brutal reckoning. For touching her, he snarled. Police sirens wailed, Sofia's anonymous tip. Detective Ramirez burst in, freezing the scene. "Drop it, Moretti." Salvatore hesitated, gun to Luca's head, but my plea, "Don't throw us away," made him lower it. Cuffs clicked, but his eyes promised, "This isn't over." The trial was a spectacle, charges of assault, weapons, but Luca's silence, Sofia's leverage, weakened the case. Acquitted on majors, probation for minors. Salvatore walked free on a crisp spring day, pulling me into his arms. "Marry me," he whispered, ring in hand. We wed in a quiet ceremony, Rio and Italy blending in vows. Our daughter, Sofia, arrived a year later, her cries filling the mansion with new life. Looking back, that tie adjustment tied our fates. From cleaner to queen, trap to triumph. I'd do it all again. Hit the like button. Subscribe to stay tuned for more interesting videos.